Alright, chapter, the last. Nothing more to write. The first time I catch Tom private, I asked him what was his idea, time of the evasion. What it was he'd planned to do if the evasion worked all right and he managed to set a slave free that was already free before. And he said what he planned in his head from the start, if we got Jim out all safe, was for us to run him down the river on the raft and have adventures plumb to the mouth of the river, and then tell him about his being free and take him back up home on a steamboat in style, and pay him for his lost time and write word ahead and get out all the slaves around and have them waltz him into town with a torchlight procession and a brass band, and then he would be a hero, and so would we. But I reckon it was all about as well the way it is. I reckon it was about as well the way it was. We had Jim out of the chains in no time, and when Aunt Polly and Uncle Silas and Aunt Sally found out how good he helped the doctor nurse Tom, they made a heap of fuss over him and fixed him up a prime and give him all he wanted to eat and a good time and nothing to do. And we had him up to the sick room and had a high talk. And Tom give Jim $40 to being prisoner for us so patient and doing it up so good. And Jim was pleased most to death and busted out and says, "Don now, Huck, what I tell you up there on Jackson Island? I told you I got a hairy breast. And what's the sign on it? And I told you I've been rich once and going to be rich again, and it's come true, and here she is, died now. Don't talk to me. Signs are signs, mine I tell you, and I know just as well as I is going to be rich again as I is standing here this minute." And then Tom, he talked along and says, "Let's all three slide out of here one of these nights and get an outfit and go for howling adventures amongst the Indians over in the territory for a couple of weeks or two." And I says, "All right, that suits me, but I ain't got no money for to buy the outfit, and I reckon I couldn't get none from home because it's likely Pop's been back before now and got it all the way from Judge Thatcher and drunk it up." "No, he ain't," Tom says. "It's all there, $6,000 and more, and your pap ain't ever been back since. Hadn't when I come away, anyhow." Jim says, kind of solemn, "He ain't coming back no more, Huck." I says, "Why, Jim?" "Never mind why, Huck, but he ain't coming back no more." But I kept at him, so at last he says, "Don't you remember the house that was floating down the river and they was a man in there, kivered up, and I went in and unkivered him and didn't let you come in? Well, then you can get your money when you want it, cause that was him. Tom's most well now and got his bullet around his neck on a watch guard for a watch, and it always seen what time it is, and so there ain't nothing more to write about. And I am right and glad of it, because I'd have knowed what a trouble it was to make a book. I wouldn't have tackled it. Wait, because Tom's most well now and got his bullet around his neck on a watch guard for a watch, and it always seen what time it is, and so there ain't nothing more to write about. And I am right and glad of it, because if I'd have knowed what a trouble it was to make a book, I wouldn't have tackled it. And I ain't going to no more, but I reckon I got to light out for the territory ahead of the rest, because Aunt Sally, she's going to adopt me and civilize me. I can't stand it. I've been there before, but I reckon I got to light out for the territory ahead of the rest. So Huckleberry still gotta go, still gotta do his thing. So I'm gonna read it. And so Huckleberry Finn ends one of the saddest happy endings in literature. Jim is free after an awful initiation and nearly gets him lynched. Tom is almost killed. He learns nothing from the experience, but Huck's loss seems the greatest of all. After finally letting his heart overcome all the prejudices and moral inhibitions that society has put into his head, having determined to defy society, to go whole hog, to rescue his friend Jim, he meets Tom Sawyer and immediately crawls back under Tom's romantic wing. Huck's character and moral nature seem violated. At the very least, he has regressed to the little boy he was at the beginning of the novel. One of the greatest characters in literature has been forced to go backwards, and we feel cheated. It doesn't ruin the book, but it does damage it. Why did Mark Twain fall down so badly? Maybe he had been creatively worn out by a manuscript that nagged him for 7 years and wanted to finish it. Regardless, maybe the progressive seriousness of the book provoked him to a broadly comic finish, and the last chapters are, if nothing else, funny. Twain himself liked the ending, and one can make a weak case for it. It does round things out and tie up loose ends. The Tom Sawyer theme is resolved, i.e., we see what happens when Tom's storybook romanticism is imposed on a real situation. On the symbolic level, the treatment of Jim does make sense. It describes the black man's true stature in 1883, technically free but actually still in bondage. On the realistic level, Jim's character takes on an even greater stature as he bears Tom's cruel foolishness with great dignity and then risk his life to save that of his tormentor. Thus, even the book's poor ending doesn't undermine Jim's character. Although Twain did not think so, claiming that Jim was based on a real-life model, and Uncle Daniel he had known as a boy. Slave Jim is, at least in the beginning, a minstrel, show, black man, a stereotype that we rightfully find offensive today, but by the end of the novel, Jim is shown to be wise, courageous, unselfish, loyal, resourceful, practical, likable, and yes, believable. He is a true moral center of the book. Through his relationship to Huck, we see not only Jim's character, but Huck's moral development as well. In the beginning, with the stereotype, Twain was simply following the artistic practices of his day and doing so much more effectively than his contemporaries. The well-intentioned 19th century white writer who wanted to portray a black character had two choices: to use the current stereotype and try to adapt it and deepen it, to create a white character in blackface. Harriet Beecher Stowe tried both approaches in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Tom is a humanized stereotype. George Wilson, the book's other hero, has no racial characteristic whatsoever aside from I don't know, okay, not, yeah, so just, I don't know, that was a little bit of the forward, but I'll just title it The Last Chapter, title 43. I already know that, that's why I already know that about Jim, you know, it was awesome. But what I did like about that forward, how it talks about how it just ends like that. Like, all of a sudden he hears about his dad dying, like, and then pretty much Jim kind of knew about his dad dying, but he didn't want to tell Huck. I guess at one point, you know, they seen a skiff going by or some sort of, I don't know what a skiff is. It could be like a floating house, you know what I mean? Because they had those back then, where like someone made a big raft out of log, or like a log raft, and it was so big that they'll build a house on it, and it's kind of float around the river. You'll see those today, you know. But yeah. Then all of a sudden he says, you know, remember that floating house last time, and I went on board, and he talks that unkivered, K-I-V-E-R-E-D. He uses kivered and unkivered, K-I-V-E-R-E-D, kivered. So obviously if you know what kivered means, then it's unkivered. So, but then he says that he's seen his dad in that house. I think he was dead. So then all of a sudden Huck says, oh, he starts talking about Tom, right? Like on the last, like, couple paragraphs. Starts talking about Tom. Oh, Tom mows well now and got his bullet around. Oh, you know, yeah, there you go. He mentions how Tom, he saved the bullet that they took out of his leg. I think it was his leg, right? Whatever, the bullet hole he got in him. Now he has it like as a medallion, like part of like a watch. And then Huckleberry's like, yeah, he's always seeing what time it is. There's no more to write about, and I'm rotten glad of it, because if I would have known how much or how hard it was to write a book, I would have never done it. But I reckon I got to light out for the territory ahead of the rest, because Aunt Sally, she's going to adopt me and civilize me. He's like, he came from a fucked up dad, alcoholic, beat him, came up on some money, you know, seen people get shot, seen swindlers, rapscallions, you know, been through a lot of shit. So he's like, there's no way they could fucking ever make him try to adopt them or anything like that, you know. It's kind of sad, man. It's kind of fucking sad. But yeah, now my next book is gonna be this one, and this one's actually shorter. This one's like less than this one's actually, no, this was like 220. This one's a little over. This is 215 pages, but it doesn't look as hard to read. Like, I don't know, do they look the same? It looks like there's more words on here, but it might be an easier read because this is the Penguin Classics. This is TOR Classic. This is Penguin Classic. This is Penguin Classic, so this is like, I guess the pages are bigger, so it seems like it's easier to read. They have another version of this book at the library, and it's freaking huge. It looks super thick, and it might have like study guide to it, you know, like some of those big Bibles have. What's TOR? Oh, the Tom Doherty Associates book, New York. I should start like hashtagging this shit when I read a book, you know? Some of those people, maybe they'll like become aware of me reading books, and they'll fucking and they'll maybe give me a job or something. Maybe they could make me a part of a certain section in their, you know, maybe they could sponsor me what I'm doing. But anyway, Huck Finn, man. This is honestly, there's some amazing parts at it, but it's just a long book, and throughout this book there'll be some very dope things, man. Very, very dope. You know, I don't know, it's an awesome book. Anyway, peace.